on that 78, there's something. This is 78, an old Brunswick recording, and yet a lustrous talent comes alive and true. The voice of our guest this morning, our very gracious guest who's been here before, Madam Rosa Raisa, who was appearing in Chicago on behalf of the, I was about to say restoration of the Auditorium Theater building. Madam Raisa, in listening to your voice as Leonora and La Forza del Destino in this aria,
well, I go back with great nostalgia of the wonderful days when I sang it in the great Auditorium Theater, a theater that should be restored, and I want it restored. I want the Chicagoans to help me restore this great monument with the most wonderful acoustics that I have sung. And I sang in many beautiful theaters and great theaters like Colonia in Buenos Aires, Covent Garden in London, and Scala in Milan, but I have never sung any acoustics in the auditorium, like at the auditorium.
You know, as you talk about this, Madam Raisa, we will return to this theme of the auditorium. I think for many people who are listening who had never been inside the Auditorium Theater, many of the younger listeners, perhaps as you recall certain memories of yourself and of colleagues singing here, it'll become alive and rich again in their minds. I'm thinking of this, the role that you played here. This is an old Brunswick record, and yet...
An old Brunswick record, and I remember when I used to make these records, of course, my voice was big, you know, and I always had to go far in distance. When I took that B-flat pianissimo, I had to be very far away, and of course, when I took a high B, you know, forte, I had to turn all the way down with my face to the wall. But anyhow, now hearing it after so many years, and I was never pleased with my records because it never showed my voice to its full value, and it's just the skeleton of it, but you can hear the quality, of which I'm very proud. I shouldn't speak about myself. Really, I didn't come here to talk about myself. I came here to talk about the Auditorium Theater.
And as you speak as eloquently as you do, Madam Raisa, of the auditorium, if we can think now from the standpoint of the artist what this means. When you were on the stage, let us say, sometimes in some houses there may be a need to force a voice.
Oh, I never forced it. I could always sing in the auditorium. The acoustic was so wonderful. All I had is to whisper. And it just flew, the voice. I could have had the most terrible cold, but I could always sing at the auditorium. I didn't have to force. And the easier you sang, the better you heard. I remember one performance of Melba and McCormick, and there wasn't a seat to be gotten for $1 million. Well, I thought I just was curious, you know, like a young prima donna, to go up and hear what they sounded like. I went up to the last seat in the gallery, and believe me, you could hear perfect. It sounded like a Stradivarius in that auditorium. And in that auditorium, when you used to go out and see those boxes side of you and in front of you, I knew every subscriber. I knew everyone where they were sitting because they showed. And there was that fluid between artist and stage.
There was the rapport then.
Yes, there was a connection.
You say that, I didn't realize Nellie Melba then sang at the
Nellie
auditorium.
Melba and McCormick.
Was this Traviata or Bohème?
No, it was Bohème.
Bohème.
And my husband sang Marcello.
Giacomo Rimini was an excellent baritone. As far as the history of the auditorium, before your time, Adelina Patti, I understand it was, who sang
that's
very opening
my
night.
time.
Yes,
she sang the opening in 1889, and Miss Mason closed the theater with Romeo and Juliet, and then I inaugurated with Aida, the civic opera.
The civic opera on Wacker. And if we may hear the voice of Patti. This was the beginning.
Please.
This was the night before, I believe, Romeo and Juliet opened. There was a special night, and she sang Home Sweet Home, I believe, Coming Through the Rye. This voice.
Oh, yes, fine. I like to hear it.
We hear this voice despite the scratch.
Yes, isn't that wonderful?
Madam Raisa, as you say this, again, I'm interested because I'm thinking of some, you mentioned colleagues, and I'm sure when you think of this building you visited, you think of colleagues, and I think immediately of someone with whom you were associated there, Claudia Muzio.
Oh, yes, what a great artist she was. I'll never forget her. Now, the beautiful golden toes of Claudia Muzio there, and a great artist whom I have admired for many, many years. Since 1909, I heard her. I was still studying at the Conservatorium in Naples. And that was a great artist. Now, those great artists, those golden days of opera, of course, it's hard to think of those days.
She was known as a remarkable actress, too.
Oh, she
wasn't
was a wonderful actress, a beautiful voice, a great singer, and a beautiful woman.
If we may perhaps, again, thinking of this building and Traviata
Yes.
and the last act
Oh,
and this
nobody like
reading
her.
of the letter.
Oh, that reading
Addio.
of the letter is something that still penetrates into your heart and soul.
And thus hear the acting and the singing
Oh,
of
it's
Claudia
something that
Muzio.
really, you can't help having tears in your eyes to think of those days. And think all those beautiful sounds in that auditorium. It sounded like melted gold.
Madam Raisa, thinking of pride, we also think again of the connection with the artists of the past. who have
Oh,
been there.
my goodness,
So
my
what-
memories
Schipa,
are...
you worked with
Oh,
Tito
yes.
Schipa too.
I sang with Schipa Don Giovanni. He sang Don Ottavio, and I sang Don Anna, and I remember, of course, he was a short fellow, great singer, but short, and he used to put some heels in the shoes. So
Yeah.
And, well, he still looked short, and I sang Tosca with him, a great singer. He was just divine. You know, Schipa, with his, didn't have a voice like Caruso or like Gigli, but he had 50%, let's say, of voice. He made it believe it was 100 and spent 25 of his energy, of his...
How was that? This is an interesting point that you're making.
he always sang with such taste, pianissimo, and it was divine, really.
Tenor of Schipa.
He's divine. My, what memories.
Other voices too.
Yeah.
We think of Galli-Curci, those being associated with the Metropolitan Opera Company, yet she sang at the auditorium herself often.
Oh, my goodness, she made her debut
Yeah.
at the auditorium on a Saturday afternoon in Rigoletto. My husband sang the Jester, and it was a sensation. That woman came out, and after the Rigoletto, I saw the whole public standing up.
What was it about Galli-Curci? There were times when
She was an artist. She was musical.
What was
Her
it about her voice?
Flute. It was like a flute, and those staccatos in her thrill. It was just like a bird singing. She was a real 100%, and a soul and personality on the stage.
Your husband, Giacomo Rimini, is known not only for his Rigoletto, but from what I remember reading, his great role was Falstaff.
Oh, yes, he's Falstaff. Toscanini, by the way, taught him the role, and he sang it at the Scala in Milan many times, and here, of course, he was really... There is a recording, a score of it, and it's really very beautiful. Once in a while, of course, makes me very sad to listen, because it calls back beautiful memories and sad memories. But this is life. We have to take it as it comes. And once in a while, I kind of like to go back to those days. I hear, and it's really a beautiful thing.
You know that phrase, Madam Raisa, life is short, art is long?
Oh, art never finishes.
Art
If
is
it's
long,
up to
yes,
us, to the generation, to maintain it. And music and the taste of music has grown. I came here in November 1913, and I can see the improvement. I can see the development. While now we have our own artists, they don't have to go to Italy to study. There is plenty of space, plenty of place for them theaters to sing. And there are many beautiful talents if they would already be given a chance. Which is better.
There's something you raised. I was listening in the very beginning as we heard you doing the aria Leonora's from La Forza del Destino. There was something you did toward the end that was quite remarkable.
A little turn.
Now, I wonder, in this matter of the training today...
Oh, well, that was training, years of study, which they don't do today. Now, that little turn, believe me, I spend lots of time to make it, even and smooth, and it sounds very nice. And this young generation, they don't take the trouble to study. They study and they want overnight. They want to go to the Met or to the Scala.
So you feel
6 years of training. I studied 5 consecutive years, every day, summer and winter.
So this is the big problem you feel today, is this...
Yes,
It's rush.
and
It's too
when
much
I
rush,
made
you feel.
my debut, I was about sure what I was going to do. And when I started in November 1913 at the Centenary, Verdi Centenary, and the first performance, the inauguration of the season, which just to think of it makes my legs shiver, and I could hardly wait to go out. They had to hold me by the arm and not to go out. I just wanted to go out and sing. I was sure what I was doing because I was prepared. And that's the way they should be today, which they are not.
And thus it was with Gally Kerchief. We may hear just a
Yes,
passage from her Caronome.
Oh, fine. That was beautiful. My, what a breath control and what divine singing. I remember her. I sang with Gally Kuch in South America, in Cologne, the Rosen Cavalier, and she was Sophie. Beautiful, and I was Marceline. And then when I came here and they gave Rosen Cavalier here, I had to restudy the part in German. And Sophie was Edith Mason. I shall never forget those high tones. It was just like diamonds. Gorgeous. I could never hear anybody. Yes.
You had done the Marschallin.
I have done the Marshall in many performances. And Polacco was conducting, Maestro Polacco. Great conductor, a great friend, and a great, wonderful person.
You spoke of Polacco, I think of Madame Edith Mason, too.
Mm-hmm.
And she did Sophie. We think of one soprano to another.
I can not hear anybody else. When I hear that C sharp, in the second act, I always, Edith's tones always ring in my ear.
You spoke of, as you were listening to Gally Kerchief, you said like a flute.
Oh, like a flute.
Yes.
When she was singing in South America, and that was before she made her debut. And when she was engaged at last, of course, Campanini didn't want her because he'd never heard her and he didn't want to engage her. And then he decided, well, they boosted her so much that he engaged her for just 2 performances. And when she sang the general rehearsal, singing in full voice the Caronome, Maestro Campanini engaged her immediately for 5 years. And he came home, he said, Raisa, what did you tell me she was singing flat? Then she was singing a little flat. Well, that woman will make a sensation tomorrow on Saturday afternoon, and he was right. Well, she was singing flat in Buenos Aires. But she corrected it, and she was perfect. She was perfect when she made her debut for years.
Thinking of the variety of roles, that, aside from remembering your colleagues, the singers with whom you have performed, the Marschallin, I wasn't aware you did it, but I know that you created the role of Turando.
Oh, yes. I was the first one to create it in May 1926 at La Scala, Toscanini conducting. And I remember Puccini came on the stage during a rehearsal of Nerone. And Nerone was given after 25 years after Boito died. And Toscanini promised him that he would give this opera. And that was a great event in 25 years. And Puccini came on the stage and he wanted to listen to some of the rehearsal. So here we were talking, and while we were talking, he told me, Raisa, I'm writing an opera in which I can hear you and see you, and I want you to be the first one to create it. So naturally I thanked him, I felt honored, and so on and so forth. And the end of that year, in November, he unfortunately passed away. And in 1925, it was in December, I received a cable from La Scala, Toscanini, asking me would I create Turando. And naturally, I was delighted and proud and happy to do that. But I had a long contract on tour, and on tour, when one name is announced, dead or alive, you have to be there. So I went to the manager and asked him to be released a month ahead of time. He said it was impossible because those days they would guarantee $13,000 a performance, and then they announced my name and I had to sing. So, well, make the story short, at the end of the tour, I rushed to Milano on the boat, and meanwhile they sent the score so I could study it on tour, my off days. When I arrived there, I was ready for my rehearsals, and what an experience that was, I can assure you.
Where was the debut of Turando? Where was it?
Scala in Milan.
It was in Milan, Scala.
And the first performance, the last duet was not given, which was written, it was finished by Alfano. Puccini only wrote to the death of Liu. Then he put his baton on the stand, and he turned to the public and announced, and here the maestro died. And the consecutive performances, we sang the duet. he never liked the duet, and which really does not click with Puccini's music, but it goes anyhow. Puccini, he could have written, God knows what a beautiful duet he would have written. Anyhow, unfortunately passed away and used death, which is so pathetic. And I can remember the feeling. I stood there naturally, which is the moment that she's supposed to stand there and attack the duet, which wasn't done. I stood there and I could feel in the air the grief of the whole theater. Well, that night people were just hanging on the chandeliers, so packed it was the theater. It was a great night, which I'll never forget. Now let's go back to the Auditorium Theater. That's what I'm here to persuade the people what can be done and to help the auditorium. This is my dream. I'm going back full of hope. People should do it on their own will. Just send in check.
If we may, we opened with your voice in La Forza del Destino. I know one of your favorite roles was that of Desdemona in
I
Othello.
used to love to sing Desdemona. It was one of my first operas that I studied. And I remember my poor father, he came to hear me. He sat in a box, and after the performance, when I came, to the Congress, and I used to go from the theater through the tunnel made up and go to my apartment, and my father was sitting there on the couch, and he expressed his, "Oh, Raisa, that prayer in the last act," he said, "I'll never forget." Maybe he was partial, but I think it is a nice...
But did your father get excited? Didn't sometimes get excited when Othello was choking you?
Excited. He walked out one night when I sang Othello. In the last act, when Othello chokes Desdemona, when he heard, saw choking me, he yelled, and he walked out of the box. He couldn't see it. And in Gioconda, when they threw me down, and I had a beautiful duet with my husband that sang Barnaba, and he used to take me from the floor of stage. He used to raise me right straight like a stick, and then whisper a few words. He says, and now he says, I'm vindicated. And he used to throw me like that, like a piece of rock, and I would fall down. And really, how I didn't break my neck, I don't know. And the people would just gasp. And my father came home. He was terrorized. He says, how can you let your wife like that? She could have broken her neck. I said, Papa, but he must do it, my husband. Giacomo must do it because the part requires. It's the effect of the opera, of the moment. He said, I don't care, effect or not effect. He is your husband, and you should let him drive.
He shouldn't beat you that
all
way.
on the floor.
Well, what happened when you as Tosca jumped off the roof?
Oh, my goodness, Tosca. Well, I don't have to tell you. He came once after the second act. It was in New York. Then we performed at Manhattan. And it was such a fiery performance. I sang the second act with Baclanov, And, with Baclanov, a great Scarpia.
Sure.
And when I finished the second act, it was just one of those fiery afternoons, Saturday afternoon, enthusiasm. And we took it really for, real. It really sounded real, And my father, after the second act, he came backstage. Nobody was allowed to come during the performance, but they let him pass because he said, I'm the father of Rosa Raisa. They let him go through. He came backstage and he hugged me. He said, Raisa, I am so happy you killed that monster.
Did you tell him there was a mattress when you jumped off the roof?
Well, sometimes I didn't have a mattress, and I pretended I had, but I would jump down, with all my imagination, just as though really I was jumping the Castel Sant'Angelo of Rome, But sometimes I didn't have, but I didn't break my leg. That's really luck.
Acting and singing, artistry
on the
all
stage,
around.
many things happen, and you don't pay attention. I remember in one performance of Tosca in the Visidati, I had Polacco conducting, and I had in the Visidati before the B-flat. That was in Ravinia Park, and mosquitoes and flies, and my goodness, I saw a fly just turning, running around my mouth, and I said, that fly will give me trouble. When the B-flat came, she just came to my mouth. I swallowed a fly, and I wouldn't spoil my B-flat, believe me. I still can feel the taste of that B-flat in the people you can imagine. That was
Didn't stop
something.
your B-flat. Rosa Raisa, I know you have another engagement, and you've been very kind with your time, and we know why you are here, and I'm sure that everyone appreciates this. Everyone connected with the Auditorium Theater Council, as well as Chicagoans who like music and art generally. So as we say goodbye now, perhaps to hear your voice singing the last part of the Ave Maria from
It
Othello.
is not goodbye. I will be here again.
For now. Goodbye
And I
for
want
now.
all my friends, all the people in Chicago, to be with me. And what they're doing, if they love me, I know they love me. And they do much for me, too, to help me go through this.
But for
difficult
now we say,
goal.
for now we say.
Oh, you want to
goodbye.
hear?
But we're going
That's
to hear
Ave
this.
Maria.
And these are the perhaps voices sound like this we will hear again.
Yes,
Listen,
I
here
love
then.
to hear it.
This
Thank
is
you
it.
very much.
Thank you very much,
It was
Madam
a
Raisa.
very pleasant hour for me with you to talk again, and very happy to reminisce the beautiful days, beautiful career of my, beautiful years, I would say, of my career, which keep me going and make me feel young again and happy.